Blast Bounty, the format, it has potential. For me, it's the timing. It's the timing of playing the online games that is a little bit disheartening to me. There's other teams out there who can overtake them.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one. Here's why. Right, we're back for another episode of Counterpoints. We are actually recording this on the third day of Blast Bounty qualifier part. That's the online component. So actually at the time of recording, the Liquid Vitality series hasn't ended, even though actually Liquid's in like a winning position at the moment, up one map. And obviously we already had the 100 Thieves over Falcons, massive upset. I mean, let's be real. They went from world champions to next match they lost to brand new IGL Gizmy with Rain back on Noble Threat. So the key thing is, let's start here, Pimp, right? It was already kind of a tradition anyway, even with the old Blast partner system where it wasn't even online. That actually, I always used to tell people, those first games are always the most upset heavy ever because people are coming out in the player break and you never know who's practiced. Also, usually the underdog plays like that's their fucking major final, you know, whereas the guy who's the big dog comes in like, all right, I'll warm up into the event. So obviously in this case, there is the extra component that if you are teams like Falcons, maybe it'll happen to Vitality, almost happened to Spirit. If you do lose the first game, there just is no Blast Bounty for you. Like, it's over immediately. There's no group state. What do you think of this? Because obviously people are going to take, and I get it, it's just the way things go. People know it's online, they know it's, but they're still going to have big reactions to these matches. People are going to, one way or the other, the team that loses is bad, the team that wins is good. What's your sense overall? What's your take on what's going on, Pim?
Yeah, I think it's the nuance of the perfect combination of what you described right here, you know, being, yes, online Counter-Strike is online Counter-Strike, and regardless of when that would have been played out in the season, there's always a bit of a caveat to it, but when the right now, you know, as I understand it, more or less the only, you know, important online Counter-Strike that takes place in terms of big events and then leading into a LAN final at Blast Bounty takes place straight after the player break, then it's like the perfect storm of whatever the fuck is going to happen, right? And I think that's the big caveat, because I feel like you and I've had discussions before about, you know, best of one versus best of threes at majors. And in general, I'm of the feeling, you know, that I don't mind that we have different formats. I don't mind that sometimes online Counter-Strike is part of what you have to be good at as a team. Sometimes best of one Counter-Strike is part of what you have to be good at as a team. You know, the more versatile you are, the better you are at maneuvering different aspects and you know, high stake games, etc., etc. There's part of me, you know, the cynic in me who's like, okay, cool enough. If you can be the best team in a best of three, but if you're not good enough to win the best of one, then you haven't unlocked yourself in the position to play the best of three in a sense. And I know that's not a popular take. I would have the same feeling or the same approach to online Counter-Strike, but not when it's the first tournament after a player break. Like, I want the first games coming out of the player break to be in a LAN environment, just to stabilize the scene a little bit, to stabilize the teams, to figure out, you know, okay, new roster changes. It's almost a bit of a joke, you know, to have a silly season, and then the first time you get to see Gizmy play for his new team, it's online, you know, or the first time you get to see JT play for Team Liquid or some of the other blockbuster signings, it's online. So it's almost like you didn't get to see them play. You kind of did, and then we have to wait until the first LAN event where we're like, okay, so this is the real debut. So I don't like the part where there's an added asterisk to every single, I guess, nuance of the game, whether that is a new player in a team, whether that is a team coming out of the player break. With Falcons, as you said as well, like, you just want the fucking major, right? You had Kerrigan pulling off his magic, and then you start off by losing to 100 Thieves. I think you and I both agree that we don't really account that result for anything for Falcons. If anything, it's great for the Thieves, and maybe it'll give them a VIS position and get invites to some of the bigger LAN events, you name it. So in that regard, that's interesting. That's a way to look at it. But it doesn't change what I feel about Falcons. It doesn't change a single thing about what we spoke about in the last episode in terms of Falcons and how we look at their season. So it's... Yeah, I don't know. You know, Blast Bounty, the format, it has potential. For me, it's the timing. It's the timing of playing the online games that is a little bit disheartening to me.
Yeah, the real thing that's funny about this is the actual people I think that benefit the most are obviously the underdog teams or the teams that have something to prove, new rosters, for example, or it's people who bet. I can tell you right now, if you ever want to bet on some CS, this is probably the best set of games ever, because what's funny is everyone has to go off the information we had last season. So the odds will always be crazy for, you know, the Falcons, the Vitalities. These teams will have bonkers, like super low odds. But as you say, it's almost the perfect storm to make upsets, bro, because think about the following, right? First of all, it's post-player break. I mean, people can go back in time. When we had the partner system, I'll even quote one of the most famous examples ever. That was where that meme came about the bad evil geniuses lineup, where Heroic was technically number one because they'd won like a blast or something going into 2023, I think it was. And then that bad hit Evil Geniuses, the one that had like Stewie 2K and all those people, that was where that woman who was like Gamer Doc or whatever, their sports psychology person, did that stupid meme where she was like, step out of the echo chamber when they won the first match. And what she didn't understand, because to be fair, I think she came from League of Legends or something, was this is not like, even though that wasn't even online, that was just LAN. It's like, love, this is the most likely match to be an upset for the number one team because, yeah, the number one team, if they're heroic, just came off a season where they'll have been in semis and finals over and over and over again. So they'll have taken a proper break. Well, I mean, that one was even the Christmas break, bro. So there's no chance they were playing CS during that break. They might even have come back. I'll even be cynical. If they'd have seen on the docket, we've got an Evil Geniuses lineup of washed NA players, they might not even have had a boot camp before. They might just come like one day before. Almost done this, like crack the knuckles and then start playing. And I think teams like that even sometimes treat that match as like a warm-up match because at least in that case also, to be fair, that was also, it was a group stage. If you even lost the first game, you could still get through. It was a low bracket, wasn't it? I will say this one, admittedly, if you don't get through the first match, yeah, you are out of the tournament. There's no land for you. I'll even add this in though. Maybe only I can say this because I don't work the events. I know it would be terrible, Pimp, to suggest that pro players would ever like not try when they're getting paid massive amounts of salary. But if you were to say to a pro player, right, guys, there's a game coming up. If you win the game, you go to the LAN. Okay, cool. If you lose it though, you won't believe this. You still at all the other LANs because you're the top of VRS, you got all the invites, but you get to have a week off. I mean, a longer boot camp. Some of them might go into that, not trying to lose, but almost just like, you know what? I don't really care either way. If I get to go to the LAN, cool. I'll try and win that start of the season. But actually, if essentially I can just like have more of a chill warm up into the season, that's not the end of the world too. So I also don't think these teams try like the motherfucker. Meanwhile, the underdogs, the Bass Bounty format especially means they play like it's their major. If you're under things, by the way, this actually, we don't know yet, might actually end up being your most important game of the season. Like you were playing against the number one team with prize money. Remember, the whole point of bounty, that's actually the part I fuck with, is that they incentivize you to pick the bigger team because you get more bounty for doing so. You can, if people don't get it, you can always pick one of the worst good teams. It's just then if you do the massive upset, you don't get very much prize money. Actually, it's quite a clever format because I've noticed so far a lot of these small teams do go for it. They go for the home run basically and go, fuck it. So you are going to try more. Then there's all that. It is online. Like, let's be real. 100 Thieves, thank you so much for showing us what online CS is like. Because if people don't know, the same day, because this is the world they're in online CS, bro, the same day they played the Falcons game, they already had to play a different online game. Earlier in the same day, they lost to NIP with that new Note guy and with Stown Orping, right? A team that everyone tells me is shit, bad. Well, you know, I think they're canny, but fair enough. They don't get very many results. They lost to them. Then they beat Falcons. And the joke is they didn't even get a whole day to celebrate because the next day they played an online game against Nuclear Tigress, who is just an online tier 2 team, by the way. Who, you wouldn't even know most of the players. They're just one of those Eastern European teams. Like, but that sandwich right there, it's like, well, guys, if the Falcons result counts, do the NIP and the Tigress results not count? I would just say like you. None of them really count, bro. Like, here's what they do count for. They count for this if you're 100 Thieves. It shows, like, maybe some potential. It shows, hey, there's something to this roster. Yeah, there's even a little bit of, yeah, maybe even Gisby out-called Carrigan. Hey, that's kind of cool. No matter what the circumstances are, that is something. But I would say, in the same way as I wouldn't then take the 2 losses and be like, they're frauds. It's all fake. It's like, no, I imagine it's just a little bit of a random result. And then also, you said it earlier, there's 2 other factors as well. This tournament especially isn't even like the Blast one, which just seeded. You literally pick who you want to play as the underdog. That's literally a system designed to help underdogs get upsets, because what it's implying is you don't just pick the team for the prize money. Presumably you pick one where you think something like, we got a good veto against them. Actually, if people want to go back, by the way, this even happened at the beginning of last season almost, which is at the beginning of last season on the first Blast Bounty, online, Foot played against Furia. I think they picked them and they almost beat them. And then when they went to land, they were beating them. That was clearly because they had like a veto edge into them. And then the last one, you said it earlier, is new lineups. Like if you're Falcons, by the way, we got a bunch of data. We've got 3 whole tournaments to watch. If I'm 100 Thieves, no one's ever seen Gizmy be the Agile. You'd have to have watched the NIP game earlier that day. Or even worse, if you're like Vitality now when you lose this game, how are you supposed to know how Jorko would play with JT with the Liquid Cop? There's no data for that. Like, you've got 0 data. They've got fucking 1 million maps they can watch. So I think actually for me, It's why I don't even hate on it, Pimp. The reason I like it is it's at the beginning of the season anyway. There'd already be some upsets and all the rest of it anyway. If anything, I'm with you, it's more the online part. If this was LAN, I'd actually give the 100 Thieves winner a lot more credence, even though I'd still say, hey, beginning of the season. At the same time, though, I'd say, hey, you did it on LAN, though. There's not many teams going to beat them on LAN. So no, I think you've nailed it on that one. I just thought we'd do like a breakdown for people because I feel like people don't know, should it count for nothing, which is too much, or is this a real result? It's like, it's not, it's a bit of both.
It most definitely don't miss the count for something, and especially for the underdog. But it's one of those few scenarios where I allow people, and myself for that matter as well, to cherry pick what I care about. Like normally I hate when people have a LAN matchup, a semi-final, and then you have fans cherry picking, for the losing side that it wasn't that bad because X, Y, and Z. You can always find the angle, that makes it look good for yourself. I think in general I hate that, but in this case I'm almost willing to say, okay, for Falcons, I don't give a damn. I didn't expect you to come in fully motivated for this game. I'm not going to hold it against you, whatever. It's a freebie, whereas I can still, take something from the Thieves' performance. And, they were boot camping as well. So sure, it wasn't a LAN game, it wasn't a studio game, but as far as I'm aware, they were sitting together boot camping. So they showed a bit of potential, you name it. And same goes on for Liquid, who as of right now, I think they just beat Vitality 2-0 and knocked them out of the bounty, right? So that's a proper win for Team Liquid, a team as well, for people forgetting, were on the way of not even getting invites to some of the bigger tournaments. Like they've been so bad for such a long time, didn't get anything done at the major as well. So they're currently on the cusp of actually getting invites. And if they want to secure a spot at the next major, they have to start off this season strong. So as you said, for the Thieves, that may turn out to be the biggest win of the whole season for the Thieves, because that's going to be an entry ticket into better tournaments, better seeding for that matter as well. When you enter the tournaments, same could be said for Liquid. Like they're one of the teams right now that is on the cusp of not even getting invited to the majors. So they need big results. They need prize money. They need a win against Vitality. They need the VIS as well. Now, that's where I turn my focus towards the Blast Bounty as well, because I think you said something interesting. People know that I work on and off for Blast, not as much as I used to, but I think the format as a whole has really a lot of potential. I fuck with the fact that they pick each other. I think it's a super cool thing that we have a seed. It's fun, it's different, and it's a good way to start the season. Right? It's a good way to create a bit of storylines and a bit of intriguing between the teams. I also think the bounty format with the prize money and how you can, as you said, be incentivized to go for some of the bigger teams, especially when it's the beginning of the season, it has a lot of potential. But as you said, and where you nailed it, I feel it's just the fact that it's online. And I understand why. 32 teams, it would be hella expensive to have them all flown in for playing one game and then sent them home the next day. So I get why, from a TO perspective, that's not really suitable for a tournament like that. So it's about whether or not do you want it to be 32 teams, or do you want to see, the 100 Thieves and Foot last season go up against some of the big teams, or do you want to limit the tournament to 16 teams, but then it's the same names being recircled, and then you don't get those upset stories. So I get it from both point of views. It's just, spoiled as we want to be as consumers of the product. If this tournament would have been on LAN, and as you said, if that game would have been in a studio, or if Liquid would have beaten Vitality 2-0 in a studio, that's when we start to talk about, okay, interesting. We get to see the body language. We get to see how they interact on and off the circle. We get to get to know the new team and get to know the new players. Whereas when I'm watching an online game, sure, I can see on the server what kind of ideas they have, but I can't read the body language. I don't, stand next to them when they're having a timeout. I don't see them walking on and off the stage. Like there's a lot that can be conducted from that, especially in my role as an analyst, but we miss all those, different aspects to it. So it's very hard to give a full picture or give a full, well-rounded analysis, which is why in some of these cases I'll allow myself and everyone else to just cherry pick whatever you make out of that game. And if you just ignore the fact that Falcons lost and you're happy on the Thieves, that's fine by me. If you want to make some crazy story about, this is the downfall of Falcons, and then I'm not going to buy into that. But if that's how you cherry pick that match and how you evaluate that match, then go ahead. I don't really care, because it is, as you said, an online game, and unfortunately something we have to deal with still.
Well, here's where it's a perfect cue up for an interesting topic, though, which is I've got a poly market for you. See, if you go to the props, how about this one? This got a lot more interesting because, by the way, Vitality's obviously gone here. Remember, Falcons is gone, Vitality, Aurora is gone. So, obviously in a second, this is going to update and this is going to go way low for Vitality here. But basically, suddenly who wins is a lot more different. Most people would have picked Vitality or Falcons. So you have Spirits, obviously all the way up at 45%. They did get, by the way, they almost themselves got knocked out by bloody OG with Cadian, but they just got through that one. Fury is at 11%, Mouse is at 9%, C2 at 6%. Right, of the teams available, does this make Spirit the one that are going to win the LAN for you? Is this a good number, do you think?
Yeah, I think that they're the favorites now, without a doubt. With Vitality gone, they're definitely one of the heavy favorites with Falcons as well. I think Furia is the last team to play now at the Bounty in round one as well. So
Yep.
if Furia were to win, I'd put them up, and they'll probably go into that second tier, maybe at 20%, 25, who knows? I think they started the whole tournament at 4 or 5%, so they've really gone up in value. Furia, that is. So yeah, I think that's fair enough. Spirit also did last season show that they were willing to invest into the tournament.
Yeah,
that was the debut with Magix as well, the new lineup. And Suntix coming back for that matter as well. And they seemed, I was in the studio with them as well. They seemed super focused. They wanted to do well at that tournament. They wanted to give Magix, some stage experience. Unfortunately, last season we had Falcons playing with what is it called? Nucleons. They stand in because Qsuka couldn't show up, so there was a caveat to that, but overall Spirit gave it a go. So with how they've been progressing, with how they played in Cologne, and with how I feel right now, donk is like, he feels like it's a good team, and he's back to his best. I feel like this is the season where they're going to ramp in some trophies. I know that we kind of praised Spirit for having the worst possible start to the beginning of the season, and then they ramped it up for Cologne, but they still need to win some of those big trophies, right? It's still a team that has donk on the lineup, and whether you like it or not, winning a Blast Bounty, that's a fairly big trophy. So I think they'll be laser focused to take it, and I'd say at 47% that it is right now, maybe at 42 if you were to catch them a bit earlier. I think that's a fair value for Spirit, and in my book, they'd be the heavy favorites if they survive the next online game, because there's one more online game they have to win, and then they'll be in the playoff online.
Yeah, I got to say, I actually like Spirit to win this one too. The other thing is, I actually think for a format, they actually are fairly sturdy against the underdog gets to pick you and all that stuff. Let's be real. One of the key factors for Spirit is how hard does donk hit. If donk hit's really hard, it doesn't matter what map you're on, mate. Like I've seen them win some ridiculous ones that made no sense from the calling and the performance. Just donk said no. That's just, he's on some Gandalf shit. You shall not pass. So I think, to me, you take Spirit as the favourite. The other one I think is cool, as you say. Look, they've got to get through the online games. But if Furia get there, I think they're a pretty good dark horse, though. If you wanted to get cheeky and take them at 11% now, I would say they're the second most likely team to win the event as of right now. So if they end up doing it, it'd have to be like a little bit of like big performances, but it's plausible. I could see that happening. So I wouldn't hate that if you want to take a cheeky flyer to get mad value. I think Furia is a pretty good one for that. Okay.
Yep.
Actually, let me think, because we can obviously just talk about some of the teams from Blast Bout. We don't have to talk about the matches necessarily, but actually, since Liquid did just win as of this recording, that particular game, and by the way, if anyone goes and looks, I saw on the scoreboard when he said that, this is actually my dream of why I said I wanted JT to join this team, Pimp. It wasn't just
to
that.
Enable Alicia?
Yeah, it wasn't just that. Personally, I do think he's earned like a step up. You look what he's done. Because remember, he's not one of these, like, listen, the Gizmy guy had one run at one major ever. That's it. Right? This guy JT has had years where he's worked at this level, and I think slightly overperformed with the rosters he's got. So that's already, like, I think he should have had a shot in a team anyway. And he's sort of like, at this point, like an adopted NA player, isn't he? Like, that's how we're treating him, because he's been in the NA scene for so long. But that's the other reason why. There's a famous saying, right? This will sound like a weird abstraction, but you'll get where I'm going with this. There's a famous saying, right, about civilizations that when they reach a crisis point where things are going badly and things are like falling apart, and what they do, people say, is they reach back. You can even see how this works in politics in the modern day. They reach back in time for the last moment that they think things were good, and they try and sort of recreate that. There's a lot of political thinking like that. Like, if we could go back to this decade, if things were like this, what about when my granddad was a kid, right? I actually think if you are an Leash fan, bro, you have to almost write that phase period off. It clearly wasn't good for any set of parties. I mean, almost immediately you could see there was some sort of a weird tension. The results were already a little bit sus, even though they had some not bad ones, right? The last time Leash was actually a bona fide, like, this guy's just a really good star player. It was when he was in Complexity playing with JT. So it's not as simple as like, every IGL who has a good star is the one. But it does feel like those two just have a connection. And I'll also put it the other way. It feels like Leash actually is one of these people where this is why I think this is his last chance in Team Liquid. His problem is he's gotten the vibe now for me of like a Shox, a Nico, where it's like they need a very particular type of caller and environment. And the thing is, if you are elite like those players, you're at the top of the world, you'll get it. Like, you'll get it given everything. That's why the joke of Shox was his nickname used to be the Princess, as in you just have to do everything his way. And if you do it that way, everyone will be happy. But if you don't, then he can have out his tip out the lip, right? Alicia's in that category too. So for me, his problem is he isn't a world-class player at the moment. So I think he actually needs this to work if he wants to continue his career and have relevance and obviously maybe even get to a better team again one day. If it doesn't work with essentially the last guy that it worked with, I think a lot of people will just go, that's it for me with a leash. Like, I'm done, we've given it a try. It's been in a few teams. So actually that's the part that hypes me, because I actually do think he's one of those people where when I watch his games, it doesn't look like, it's a bit like Nico. It doesn't look like they just can't aim anymore, bro, and their mechanics have fallen off. No. There's just something about, how they're viewing the game or what their role in the team is. So I can't know because this is one match, but I certainly do hope this is going to fix it. It's more actually, the question mark for me, that team wasn't Leash, it's more this Jorko move. I think that's kind of a bit of an out of left field move, but let's see. Maybe we trust the scouting on that one. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a cool way of doing it if you're Team Liquid. To me, it speaks in two different directions. One is Liquid knew and Liquid is aware that right now they're not the powerhouse they used to be. So in terms of acquiring new talent and acquiring players who could potentially enable Elish, like let's say you're Liquid, right, and you walk out to the open market and you're trying to acquire players like Frozen, or you want to get the next new big talent, right, and they have different offers in their hands as well, whether that is for Frozen to stay in FaZe or go to Na'Vi, or let's say Emma became available. Like what's the reason to join Liquid right now? They have a coach who you're not really sure whether or not it's going to work out. They've had Elish, who's been slumping for quite some time. They're still stuck with Nafly, brought in a new in-game leader. Like, there's not a lot of attraction to Team Liquid. So the way they looked at it right here is to protect the investments they've already done, which is Elish, right? They looked at him, okay, so how do we get the most out of the biggest investment we have within the team and the one chance we have of maybe, fist fighting our way out of it? Because that's also the caveat of that. If you're bringing in JT, you're bringing in the in-game leader who enabled Elish in complexity, and I will say like this, and I agree with you, I think JT overperformed for a long time in complexity. And the best example I can give you is a lot of the desk segments I've done on complexity when they were playing some of those, quarterfinal games or semifinal games where they made it out of the playoff. They would always fuck up 3v3 scenarios or 2v3 scenarios or something like that. It would never be in JT. Like the opening of the round and getting into a winning position and, placing Halcirk and freaking what was he called? Floppy and the other guys, who were part of complexity at the time being, placing them in a 3v2 or in a 4v2, and then they would fuck it up. Then they wouldn't be able to communicate with each other. Then they wouldn't be able to have the individual decision making at the level required to beat a FaZe at the time or a Vitality at the time, and you name it, right? That was always the issue. It wasn't the game plan. It wasn't how they opened up the round. If anything, I think JT was one of the in-game leaders who put his team in a winning position more often than they were probably supposed to be. And I think for that, he never got enough credit. If he can do the same thing in Team Liquid, then you can enable Elish, right? And if you enable Elish and all of a sudden he becomes the guy you want him to be and the guy I want him to be, then you can also go into the market in December when you have the next player break. And that's when you become attractive. That's maybe when you acquire a new player instead of Nafly, unless he's all of a sudden stepping it up.
Yes.
And then, as you said, with Jorko as well, a bit of a gamble. I like that. It was bound to happen for Ultimate. Like, you simply couldn't continue with Ultimate regardless of whether you could find someone else who you thought were better. It was just about getting a fresh new look at it, getting a new player in. And I think Jorko, so far from what I've seen, small sample size, obviously, looks to be good, looks to be a decent player. And also, you look at his history, his online games, you name it. He looks to be a player that can definitely have the potential. And if anything, it's sort of like a low-risk gamble, because if the alternative was to stay with Ultimate, you may as well go sign me to play for Team Liquid. Nothing would have happened from that at all. It would have been the same thing. So I think the way, and I hate that I say this because I think you and I agree on this, when you look from the outside, I think the GMing Liquid have done right here is quite smart. It's probably the only solution they had. They've done it in a way where you haven't splashed a lot of money. It's not like acquiring JT cost you a fortune. It's not like salarying him cost you a fortune. Same could be said for Jorko. So I think they've done a good job from the outside, and that's my issue. That's where I want to revert to what I'm saying now. I thought the same thing when they brought in Nerds. I thought the same thing when they brought in Shuhei. I thought the same thing, in some of the other roster moves. So from the outside, at least, it looks good. Getting against a win versus Vitality, obviously also a good stepping stone. If anything, it gives them prize money. It gives them the potential of winning one more game, getting to the LAN environment, and getting some VRS points, which they desperately need if they want to guarantee themselves for the next major. So I think, given how low the bar has been set for Team Liquid, I like what they've done. I like the approach they've done. And if anything, if they're successful with it, it's not that this team, this 5-man roster is going to win a trophy or going to be, consistently in semifinals or finals. But if they can just become good enough and enable a guy like a leash and make JT look good as an in-game leader, all of a sudden they become an attractive team to join again for some of the better players they need in order to be good.
Yes. I think what people need to do, you did it perfectly there, is we've got to stop judging rosters like it's binary. Like either this roster works or it doesn't work and we kick everyone. Almost nobody in modern CS or sports is ever going to do it that way again because you invest so much money, the costs of everything, and also when you start over, it's even more expensive to build a new team. Like how are you going to get a whole core to come? How are you going to build piece by piece like all the best players? What you have to do, like you say, is the thinking has to be, how do we get one piece better in the next roster mania, basically. And if you keep doing that, and then pieces like JT at least show their quality, malbs, then the ideal scenario is not only is it going to be a better piece, like an upgrade each roster mania, but within 1 or 2 roster manias, so within a year, basically, if you're a team like a Team Liquid, you can be back in the mix of your actual top 10 team consistently. You're back where you should be if you're Team Liquid. But in the same way as actually you can look back and the same thing happens in reverse. Like you add the play you think's the right one, but it's the wrong move, and then you add another one you think and it's the wrong move again. That's what gets you down and down and down. But people thinking like kick the whole squad and sign like, I don't know, M80 or something, like you're out of your mind. That's not that. No one's going to do that. And that's like some really old school thinking where you can just go and pick people up for cheap. In the modern day, people are not going to do it that way. Like if they think pieces like Elysia have value, they're not going to kick an immediate. Also, let's be real. If you're Elysia Naff, you're also fucking Mr. Team Liquid, both of you. Like that's part of what people are still here for if they're fans of Team Liquid. So until we know you can't be good, we're not going to kick you out the team. We've got to have something. Because again, if I bring in those M80 players, for all I know, by the way, maybe they would even play better. I'm suspicious of that myself, but let's say they did. They wouldn't have any fans though. They're starting over. They've got low profile. Also, I'll just say it here because I said it on my other show as well. One thing that's also a very positive thing is JT's not some person I talk to often, but he's one of those people I sometimes reach out to. And I can confirm he actually did, because I basically told him as a rare thing, when I did my roster mechanics show with that Loz guy who does all the interesting stats about how stuff, basically he showed that they still in Liquid hadn't done what we all thought they were going to do. I thought the whole point of bringing malbs was to have malbs set up a leash. They were actually doing it the other way around, believe it or not. It was actually a leash that was going in first. That's why malbs' numbers went up. So I reached out to the JT guy and said, look, I know this is obnoxious, by the way, because normally I would never tell a pro player, hey, check out this piece of content. But I said, believe it or not, there's like some interesting angles in here about the previous version of Liquid, though. Like, I think you should have a look at, because there's like an interesting dynamic of some of the players. And he basically told me, like, oh, I've actually seen the episode. Yeah, I saw it. So look, I don't know whether he's going to do something with that, but that's kind of cool in itself. Like, he's aware of it. Because believe it or not, they also don't have to be way better for me. The number one criminal sin of the last version of Liquid with Shu here for me was this. The reason why they so rarely got any upsets, no matter what people's fragging was like, is if you ever watched them play, bro, they had almost no identity as a team. Like, I'd have a very hard time even explain what their style was. It was like a bad pog. It was people doing things like, right, take mid on Ancient, but then like you don't run out, because in a pog you wouldn't, mate. You'd let the first guy die, and then the molly, and then you go, fuck, I'm not running in there. But on a pro game, you all run out. You're supposed to run out and have like a 2v2 or something, you know. So essentially, the worst thing about the Shuey version, it's actually why I'm not surprised he's fired. And I actually predict, by the way, I think if he even comes back, it's going to be on a small org. I do not think he's getting any name position in any named org. Because if you look, he was the guy who was the IGL, whereas one thing I actually do trust about JT is he will put what you call like his imprint on this team. Whether it's good or bad, I imagine they will play his style of CS and do, and if anyone ever saw some of his past teams, he even was a guy I could tell was putting in work, doing new smokes and things like that, and trying to come up with little tricks that could get him ahead. Yeah, I actually think that's why I'm like quietly hyped about Liquid. I won't go crazy because I can't know the Joko guy, but like the names are all a bit wacky still because not a lot of them are in peak CS. But I think there's potential there. It's an interesting project for me.
Yeah, me too. I think if anything, I think people at home would feel the same. The bar's been set so low, you know, at this point for Team Liquid that it can pretty much only get better. You know, it's the same treatment we're giving FaZe Clan to some degree that, you know, I'm vaguely hyped about FaZe Clan in the sense that it can't get any worse, and there's still some interesting names within the lineup. But as I said, you know, it's not a team that I expect to go deep into playoffs or consistently to be part of the big players. But if anything, if they can just remain competitive and at least move in the right direction, then they become attractive for what could be, you know, good players in the future and what could be a bit of a resurgence and comeback. One team I want to discuss though, and just quickly,
go on, if it's quick.
Yeah, there's just one, you know, and it's G2. Like G2 in this roster season, like they got rid of Son Payers, and I think to a lot of people that made sense from the outside. He's been hasn't been bad. He's just not been a difference maker. And sometimes you need an AWP player who can make the difference, But there's not a lot of AWPs right now on the market. Same reason why Liquid kept Ultimate for a long, long time. You name it. Then they go get rid of some players and they get Wrinkle. Personally, I don't see that as an upgrade. I see that as a massive sidestep where you go from one player to another. One is not necessarily better than the other. One is not worse than the other. And then you can argue, okay, we just needed some fresh look at it, or we needed a different ops style, a bit more aggressive, one that is not as defensive as some players, etc., etc. But then I'm thinking you also have this guy called Klim, contracted to G2 Academy, G2 Ares, or whatever they're called. He was loaned out to MIBR, and he showed a lot of potential during the major. Showed that he was actually quite, aggressive with the orb and could be a future prospect. So you went out of your way to kick some players, bring in Wrinkle, and then you still have Klim, loaned out to MIBR, or I guess officially right now inactive. So I don't know what you feel about G2. I think the rest of the lineup is really, really good. I personally believe in Hunter as an in-game leader. I think he's growing better into it. Not saying he's by any means like a top 3 in-game leader candidate at the moment, but I think he's good. I think Heavy Guard is fantastic. I think Mattis is okay as an individual. I think there's a lot about G2 that I like. I think Nerd still has potential to come back to his true self with Saw as a coach, but this whole Wrinkle in, Sun pairs out, Klim on the bench, personally, don't get it.
All right, I'll give you my angle on this. So first of all, the Wrinkle one is just a simple one. I actually genuinely just think, since Saw used to work with Snappy and Snappy was Wrinkle's IGL, I think he just reached out to him, and there's not that many options also for AWPers. And he probably just asked himself, like, what's this guy like to work with? Like, does he, because one thing that actually, I just had Spray XD, who used to be the assistant coach of NIP not that long ago, on a recent Snake and Banter, and he actually said one thing about Wrinkle that would surprise people, because if you ever see he's Ukrainian, he's cocky, and his style of play is like simple-esque, right? He says actually he's very coachable, believe it or not. He's one of those people who's very open to, like, receptive to being given, thoughts about how his game. So that's also, if I'm a big coach like Saw who wants my project to be my style, that's a big quality, actually. That's maybe something you wouldn't guess from the outside. And then the other thing is, I actually think it's not a downgrade. I think it's just a side grade. Because here's the thing for me. I actually do think Sun Pius was like a more cerebral player, and as a pure AWPer, he had a more consistent style. But first of all, he did have a dog shit rifle. Like, he was fucking bad when he wasn't on the AWP. And then also, Wrinkle's style is the opposite style of AWPing. It's the, like, really fast, flicky style where you're going to hit and it'll look awesome, the ceiling's higher, but also he's going to have games where he just whiffs everything and he doesn't hit anything. So for me, I take this as a gamble, like you say, of like, we just want to like insert a bit more like explosiveness to the roster or something like that, I think that's what they're trying to do with this. The Klim one's interesting because I can only speculate on this. I genuinely think that this is what's going on, right? Even though I will certainly be very critical of certain GMs, certain orgs, sometimes I do think they're idiots. I actually do think most of the time when the big orgs pass on a player that looks like, how could you not sign him? I think they usually have a good reason. Like, I'll give you an example. Even though the story supposedly goes that Keisuke could have joined Spirit, but he like chose to join Falcons, and people claim that Modesine convinced him by talking to him. At the same time, they could also put Keisuke in a Spirit way before that. Like, they had him in their academy like the whole time. Basically, they've had Donk in the main team. So I think if they really, really thought those two players would have worked awesome together, and I think they would have even done it before. I almost think they did. Whether they're right or not, I think they actually did perceive him to be like a Donk type player, and their logic was, we've already got one, so we're looking for other players. So I'll do a similar logic to the Klim one, right? Since it's not recent, if people don't know, the entire time he was in MIBR, he was just on loan. He's been the G2 Ares, which is what they call their like academy team. It's just that they're not a famous academy, unfortunately, so people forget they even have an academy team. He's been there the whole time, mate. Even before this one, back when when they've had some Pius. So in this scenario, here's what I would say about this. I don't think that Saw is an idiot and that G2 are morons. So that they've seen this guy, but then remember, they could even have gone and talked to his academy coach. Since he's an academy player, by the way, when he's not on events now, they could have even have had him play scrims or something. You could do whatever you wanted. I'd play pickups with him, whatever you want. I don't think these guys really saw this guy because, in MIBI, he was popping off, mate. He had some big games. I don't think they're morons. I don't think they saw him and went, I'm an idiot, so I won't use this player. I would speculate the following. I think either his English isn't really, really good. He might just have basic English. So maybe in that case, in their team, it looks like they want to be very vocal, doesn't it? They have a lot of vocal players. Heavy God, I'm going to imagine, talks a lot. Hunter certainly does. That's even implied from Sprixty as to why they might have removed some pints. You know, people said he's a secondary caller. He actually speculates maybe there was too many voices. There was actually too many people conversing. I would imagine that the Klim guy seems more to me like he just shoots the gun, you know what I mean? And then I'm going to be rude when I say this, but I have to say it. I think there are certain types of players, I'll phrase it this way, they just aren't very cerebral players. They're really just like, I see a guy, I shoot him. Now, there's a certain type of team. I think a team like Foot, that'd be a great fucking team for a guy like that. We'll tell you when to run on the site, shoot people, job done, we win the round. I think there's teams, and this is one of the areas I actually will criticise G2. I think G2 does think Hunter's going to be some shit hot IGL bro. If you look at the way they've set their team up and the people they've signed, I think they think he's going to like control the game and be masterful and be some mid-round god. I haven't seen it personally. I think he's had some teething issues. But so in my opinion, if it's true the Wrinkle guy's a very coachable player, I think they just saw that as like that's a better fit. So I listen. In the future, whether any of this is true or not, it's all speculation. I certainly think if Wrinkle turns out not to be good, you can say I would have still given it a chance. But again, because he's the academy player, I don't know if they have given him a chance. Like maybe they gave him the odd scrim over the year. Yeah. Maybe they even tried. Now, who the fuck knows? Because remember, as much as like we have all these international teams now, he is a Russian player. Like, people forget this. Yeah. Even though technically, this is actually a weird thing about Heavy God. Heavy God is like simultaneously Israeli and Russian, I think it is, or something like that. Is it Ukrainian or Russian? I think it's Ukraine. I think it's Russian and Israeli. So as far as I know, because he has really good English, bro, he's not like struggling. But there are certain Russian players that have limited English, let's put it that way. You muted yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. It's just... Initially, and this is like a very simplistic way of thinking of it, Wrinkle is a player that weren't cut it for NIP. That's a player they benched, and there's a reason I assume they benched him, even though I think he wasn't the issue in old NIP, but they benched him. So you're telling me G2 with Heavy Guard, with Mattis, with Hunter, they're going to use a bench player from NIP to get better. Like, I know that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but it made me think of, that's why I Googled right here, some of the football players, that managed to fail upwards in a sense. I think he was called, was it Kevin Prince Boateng or something like that, who played in Schalke 04 or whatever, then went to PSG and became the substitute player, the attacker they played, whatever, Messi, Neymar, or whatever they were called. Mbappe didn't have to play, so to spread out the minutes, basically, but there's not a lot of players in football for that matter, but certainly not in Counter-Strike that managed to fail upwards in that regard. So if you're not good enough in NIP, it's not like you get a better off all of a sudden and you're going to be good enough for G2. And I won't hold that up against Wrinkle because he's also 21 years of age, I think. So again, if he's coachable, he's young. He has shown glimpses of potential before he joined NIP and in NIP as well. So sometimes you also, if you're G2 and if you're Hunter for that matter, you look at a player and you're like, okay, so Snappy couldn't get the most out of this guy. I think I can bring, this guy to life. And that's fair enough if they've had those conversations. But from the outside, it's just me personally. I feel like G2 is still a household name in Counter-Strike. I think they still play good enough Counter-Strike to be attractive to a lot of players. But if anything, the way I want to summarize it so we can move on is that if I've said it a couple of times and I keep hammering it down, but the AWPers market right now is horrendously bad. Like, as I said, if the best thing G2 can do in an offseason is sign a player that was deemed not good enough to NIP, a team that wasn't part of the major, a team that's been struggling to establish themselves, to a team that went to the playoff of the major and replace a guy like some players with him, then it's if anything, it's a sign that right now, as you said, like there's simply no AWPers on the market that can make you better. So you just have to take the sidestep and hope you can make that player just slightly more competitive than some players were.
Anyway, one thing I'll use as a transition point. Obviously, if you are a fan of Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, hopefully you're now eating good. There was many, many years at this point in time where those orgs were irrelevant. You can even add FaZe Clan. What have they been for the last one? I even used to say the same thing about FaZe Clan. The reason I was out on them before 2026 even began is they had no style of play anymore. It was just a bad version of the old FaZe Clan. So that reminds me, actually, since we've got our wonderful sponsor Huel here, of times in life where you just have to accept, like, I just don't have any food in the house. And by the way, depending on what country you're in, I'll even tell you a mad one. If you're in countries like Italy and Germany, they don't even have a supermarket open on Sunday. I've actually done that mistake there before me, where I've been there and I didn't buy anything on Saturday. And then the next day, I'm literally eating bad takeaway food, or just even worse about someone's house. Like, I won't make a massive complaint, fair play, they were hosting me, but like German bread, mate, is a nightmare. They have that like really harsh one that's like all wheaty and stuff. That's not. But listen, mate, I like the white bread, the traditional classic one. Yes, to put the baked beans. That's a joke. Obviously, I don't really eat baked beans, so almost no one does. But the point is, I wasn't having a proper meal. It was a nightmare, and I was basically the whole day almost just waiting, like tick 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 tick. When's Monday? When's Monday? When does the kebab shop open? Basically, so what I would have loved to have had would have been a lovely bottle of Fuel. I actually had this one just the other week. It was strawberry banana flavour. Tastes quite nice, and it was filling, I have to say. Did last me right through till dinner time. The bottle like that, the Black Edition bottle, has 35 grams of protein, 7 grams of fibre, and is under $5 a meal. If you take it as a powder, which I have like a shaker thing for it here, that has 40 grams of protein, and you just mix it with water or milk for 30 seconds, shake it up a bit, you can just basically drink it down. Also goes down really nicely. It is a complete meal that you have instead of food. It's not like a shake you have on top of or just before or after food. It's a whole meal that you can have. It has 27 essential vitamins and minerals, no artificial sweeteners, colours or flavours. And if you are a new customer, online you can get 15% off. You can check out some of these different flavours and their products. So I think if you go to the gym or you just have a busy work life, or even if you're just a gamer who's just queuing up a million Premier and Face It games, and you don't want to have to go and say, sorry guys, AFK, and then sit like 1 hour when people are waiting. When's he coming back? When's he coming back? You just drink this in like 5 minutes, mate. You can be back.
Honestly, if you're a guy like me who burns 6,000 calories a day and you don't want to eat 24/7, sometimes it's nice just to drink your meal, and drink your calories in that regard. So there's a lot of different uses for it.
So limited time offer, make healthy eating simple. Get Huel, spelled Huel, today with my exclusive offer of 15% off online with my code LFN at Huel.com/LFN. New customers only. Thank you to Huel for partnering and supporting our show. Okay. What were you going to talk about now, Pimp? Is there any other teams that are out there that are interested in you at the moment, or something upcoming?
I don't know. Astralis is always a bit of a fun one for me, obviously. They haven't made roster changes, but
they did
made
coach, though.
In personnel. Yeah. Brought in NEO. I'm excited for one reason, and I never saw NEO in FaZe as a coach. I'm sure he did a lot of coaching. I'm sure he has coaching capabilities, but as you said, like the old FaZe, it almost sounded like they just kept on playing the same way, and they would just hope the individuals would carry them out. It never felt like a team that had a clear vision. Never felt like Kerrigan, as I described many times. I think Kerrigan is the type of player who wants the coach to be his right-hand man, not necessarily be having a coach that is challenging him, right? It's not like Blade and Navi, who's basically making the playbook and making sure that they play the game in a way that he sees fit for the team. That's not the coach I've never seen NEO as, and that's never how he was introduced into FaZe Clan. However, coming into Astralis, if you're NEO and you're a coach and you want to put a stamp on your coaching capabilities and your coaching career, this is the time to do it, right? If I can see an Astralis that is changing a bit in their play style, that is all of a sudden getting more out of the individuals, looking at a guy like Rio as an example, who were farming tier 2, tier 3 teams before he joined Astralis, and all of a sudden he became a bit of a weak spot within the lineup. Like if I'm NEO, if I'm a coach right now, I'm looking at that guy, I'm looking at Hooksy, I'm looking at Astralis as a project that I can sort of form and maybe make a better team overall. So nothing to speak about in terms of the individuals. I feel like we know already, if we go by the players, Fusi is okay with AWPer, has good times, bad times, a little bit inconsistent. Stair is the one star within the lineup. I feel like he's the one player that they're going to have a tough time to keep if they don't play well and if they don't start to make progress, because I think Stair is good enough to play on a much better team. Stair in a G2 wouldn't be out of question, I think, or at least in that caliber. But the change of coach to me is interesting for Astralis as a whole, because Roger never really got the most out of them. Tried his best, but hasn't really gotten anything out of any team as of recently. And if you're NEO, I get to see who is he as a coach. Like, is he just a yes guy who's a bit of a vibey guy who makes sure that everyone is in check and is a mature aspect to a young team? That could also be part of it. We know Hooksy to be very emotional, to be slamming disc, etc., etc. Rio is relatively young, you name it. So maybe they need a bit of a father figure, but I don't know about you, and you probably know him better than I do from the 1.6 days and some of the tendencies, but coaching FaZe didn't teach me anything about NEO. Now, coaching Astralis, I'll get to know about him. Is he the real deal or is he not? So for me, that's an interesting angle at the very least.
I've got an edgy take for you to start this out, which is obviously 2 of the legendary Polish players are coaches. There's actually 3 because Cuban also coaches Focus. But NEO and TaZ both coach. Obviously, TaZ coaches BC Game, and previously he was with G2. NEO's coached mainly just FaZe, but now he's with Astralis. Right, here's what I think's edgy. This is an example of how certain players just get to skate. Because what's bizarre is the whole time TaZ was the G2 coach, people constantly just acted like he was a fucking idiot and just shit at the game and knew nothing about CS, which is crazy. Because what's bizarre to me is NEO had, in theory, I think, an even better overall core of players. Like, I thought that G2 roster was pretty scuffed. People forget TaZ joined after the period when they'd won all those tournaments with Huxley. He joined in the one that had Nexa, if you remember, and they had like scuffed results. But even so, they won the IEM when Nico was the IGL and Stewie 2K came in. And then they won 2 blasts later on, right? If people don't know, that's the same amount of trophies NEO won. NEO won 3 trophies total in FaZe. He won 2 at the beginning of the CS2 period, and then he won the IM Chengdu in 2024. Now, true, he was in a bunch of major finals. By the way, TaZ was in a couple of semi-finals of majors. What I think people are missing is this. I actually think here's the edgy take. I don't think NEO's ever done anything so far to suggest he's a great coach. And I actually think if you look at the 2 of them, it seems like they've had quite comparable results relative to their rosters. Because what's funny is at the time in G2, everyone would have said about TaZ, yeah, but he has Monacy and Nico. How did that work out for Zonic? He had him with an even better fucking roster, mate. He didn't win until Carrigan came. And by the way, the same Carrigan is the one that NEO has all his results with. And I'm sorry, that's why you don't get any credit. NEO basically, even though there was rumours of people saying he's working with Smokes and Strats and people, I'm sorry, they do put him in the same mental bucket as Robban. They put him in you're a legendary player, so you're really more there to be like, almost like a shoulder for people who are themselves top players, to be like, I know what it's like, I know what we're going through, chill out, don't worry about the lot. Simple thing. I always call it being a big brother, which is, by the way, it's a form of leadership. But in that team, I'm sorry, we all know this. The reason why everyone calls Carrigan the GOAT is they perceive him to be the main reason why these teams play the style they play, why they perform the level they do, and why star players perform at the level they do. Like, I mean, if anything, another bad sign for NEO is Carrigan just left you, bro, and then went and got a troubled team and then just won the fucking world championship with them. So if it was you doing it all in FaZe, that unfortunately, that's not a great sign for you. So the issue I'm with you. I actually think this is where you can finally see if NEO was a good coach, because he's at a much lower level. He himself's got like a roster that, like, it's not bad, but it's not great. There's not that many big name pieces here. I'd say it's more of one of those rosters where it's just the average level's pretty decent. I think there's some good players here, but then there's no like world beat. Again, there's no like NEO and like Nico and Monacy, like, oh, they just win the game fight. No, you're going to have to actually have a role in this. And this is where I'll actually speculate from knowing NEO in 1.6. One of the problems I think NEO had, which is why I wouldn't have recommended he became a coach, believe it or not, it would have made way more sense to me that TaZ became a coach, because TaZ actually was, like, NEO did IGLing briefly in the end of 1.6 and a little bit in CSGO. Mainly, TaZ was it was TaZ and Cuban that would swap off IGLing in their teams, right? When TaZ did it, TaZ's IGLing style already was sort of like spirit and like motivation and driving people, and it wasn't the greatest tactics. I always thought Cuban was actually the better tactician. TaZ's style was more like, because he was also like an entry player, it was more like, follow me, guys. We're going to get a pick here and we're going to burst onto. That's why the Verts Plow style. I always thought he was the better IGL when they did that style, personally. So to me, TaZ had more of the natural qualities of the leadership. Here's the reason why I was worried if NEO ever became either IGL, by the way, or coach, is because his style when he was the best player in the world was he was on some like quiet superstar shit. Actually, you know what? You can make it like Harry Kane if you want. Harry Kane's more the guy where, like, the reason he's your captain is he scores the goal every time. So, you know, if you're a teammate, like, hey, I have to play it to his standard, and he's a model professional, and he works all the time, and he's humble, and he listens to the coach. That's what you make one of them people you coach, because they lead by example. He's not the guy that's going like, guys, we're in the trench, so follow me, and we're going to do it. Nah, that's like a different. NEO's like that, bro. I can tell you, as a star player, because he was the only player that never would have been kicked out of his teams. They used to try and kick all the others, by the way, when they had drama, because he was the only one that couldn't be kicked. He got to kind of just chill, and every person in that team, by the way, knew, just like his alias from the fucking movie The Matrix, he's the chosen one. Of course he's always going to be here. So to some sense, unfortunately, I actually think players like that most of the time, Pimp, don't make very good coaches, because they come from a world where the type of player they were, they're not coaching players like that. They're coaching people like, think of the roster he has now. So he's coaching Stair, right? I think Stair technically is the best player on this team. The issue is, it looks like he's he's already hit his ceiling of ability, though. He's not going to suddenly become like... Put it this way, I'll give you an example. TaZ has Senzu. I think Senzu has much more potential than Stair. They're both good players. I really like Stair's game because it seems well-rounded, but he doesn't seem like he's got superstar potential. You know what I mean? He seems like a guy with above-average skills who's applied himself, has a good mentality, and currently he's the player you put in good roles. You go look at someone like Yabi. I think Yabi's a guy where, I don't know where this guy's going in his career. He used to be really good a few years ago. Yeah. CSGO, it's too, he's been a bit more up and down. Like, some of these players, like, you're going to have to really get to know these people on like a one-on-one level, bro. This isn't going to be easy to coach. So I do think the potential is massive. If this team ever becomes top 10 again, I think you'll get a lot of plaudits. People will say you must have been part of why, because I think most people look at this roster and see this one as like, this roster is going to be like between positions 12 and 20, and that's just what's going to happen for the rest, going forwards. Like, they haven't had any sexy signings. They haven't even done the roster move. As you say, the Ryu guys struggled, but they're giving him another season. Who knows why? Do they believe in him? Is the money issue? No one even knows, by the way. And by the way, quite frankly, no one really cares either. So the reason why, if you're Neo, it's a good project, in my opinion, is one, you get to actually test if you're a good coach or not. And two, this is what coaching is. I don't think people get this. Like the Zonic type thing. The reason I don't begrudge Zonic Falcons is he earned it, bro. He took two of the best teams ever and won world championships with them. At that point, you get to call your own ticket. You know what I mean? It's like this, there's all these rumours that Pep Guardiola comes back to coaching. If he comes back, bro, he doesn't have to go and prove himself and join like fucking, like Everton and he gets to pick the best job in the world doing exactly like if he had have been the England coach, that was a rumour. If he apparently turned down the Italy coach. If he'd have done that job, that wouldn't even be you're the coach. That would be like, you can hire all your assistant staff, you can decide the style of play. Fuck it, you could like leave the star players behind if you want. That's what we're going to do. So Neo isn't at that level. It's actually the reason why I think him and TaZ, unfortunately, haven't had these great reputations. I think their reputation for as a player got them a job that was above their level. I'll give you the obvious football examples. Mate, it's notorious in English football. How about some of the best players ever from England? Wayne Rooney, Frank Lampard. Mate, these guys are...
Lampard is doing good. Lampard is doing good.
He was fucking trash when he was with that team a few years ago, mate. Even my boy Steven Gerrard has just been absolutely mid as a manager. He had a little run with Aston Villa and then they did fucking now afterwards. The problem with all these people is none of their playing skills apply to the fucking coaching game. You have to think of coach. It's like when a player swaps from star to IGL. It's a new job, mate. Imagine you start at level 0 and on day 1 you're just learning the basics. That really is what I think you have to do. And sort of, if you're Neo and TaZ, I actually think those first rosters, it's hard to judge what you were doing, mate. When you had the highs, cool. When you had the lows, was it all your fault? I don't know. I more judge these later projects. Like if TaZ has success with BC game, I think you've got to give him some credit. Think of the egos of that team. If Neo gets this team in a shape and they're actually like competing and sort of like on Mongols-esque, where they're kind of like a canny underdog that can just get wins, we'll give him credit. Because, by the way, I gave that example because we give Mara Infinity credit now, don't we? What fucking player does he have to work with? So I think it's actually just a really tricky position for Neo.
Yeah, that made me think, speaking of tricky positions as well, like the coaching market, we spoke about the AWPers market being very limited right now. Arguably, I'd say like if we were to revisit this era in 5 years, I think we'll label this as the worst period ever for AWPers. I know Monesi, Saivu, simple in his prime, etc. But right now, there's not a lot of good AWPers. I think it's the best time ever to be a shitty AWPer. You have a job, whether you want the job or not. You're gonna have a job. Ultimate is the greatest example of that in Team Liquid. How do you rate the coaching market right now? Because I feel like it's so hard from the outside, and that's what the caveat we always have to put ourselves to, like judging what from there. Like how are we supposed to know what Neo did in FaZe Clan unless the players are telling us, unless we get unlimited access and blocks, etc., etc. So I find it hard to evaluate the coaching market right now, but I agree with you. I think there's a lot of coaches right now who have a job because of what they did in their previous career, and I'm going to do my favorite in-game leader of all time a bit dirtier. Glaive is the same to me. I don't know if Glaive is going to be a great coach, but I bet you he got the job because he's Glaive. Maybe he turns out to be a great coach. Maybe he can translate what it is as an in-game leader into coaching. It's a gamble from the Thieves, and I get why they took the gamble, but I'm not going to give Glaive credit as a coach just because he was a great player. I'm going to evaluate him as everyone else, but that made me think of where you see the coaching scene at right now. Like, do you think coaches have enough impact for us to even say that it's a strong market right now for the coaches? Or do you think there's a lot of coaches per se, who are just coaches because they're washed-up players and they need a job, or they want to stay within the scene, or they want to stay in touch? And I guess nowadays you need a coach.
That's why, to me, it also depends on the personnel, though. Like I say, I think if you have FaZe or you have Nico and fucking Modesty, you're not even going to get to do that much, mate. Like, I'm sorry. First of all, it's obvious how the team should play. And then secondly, in those cases, either the stars are going to determine it or the IGL's going to determine it. Like, you're almost like an assistant to them or part of their project. Whereas the ones that I'm interested in, and this is why these are the ones in the top teams, is you look at people like Saw, Harley, Blade, Mara. The perception is the team starts with them and then you have the start. Then you have a sense of what you're doing. Then you have whoever it might be. Like you can put in the players and take them out. Like it seems like the team still runs the same way without those people. And actually you have to fit to their style. It's why I actually do think that's another thing that happens in sports, by the way. I think there's actually all-time great managers, like I said before, where they get to determine everything about how the team runs. That's why you sign them. But if you don't get those guys, the guy who's what you call the journeyman, he just goes from team to team to team. Those guys will tell you years later in an interview, I actually didn't get to do much of my style with that team because when I joined, for example, I'll give you a random example. Maybe my style is that, I like to have attacking fullbacks. We didn't have any defenders that had any skill, those. I had to play like a normal 4-4-2 and just play defensively. Like, that's not what I wanted to do, but I had to try and win games. I have to win Saturday's game. Don't have to keep in my job. So I think there's a lot of things like that in CS. Like, first of all, I do think there is a massive lack of people who only made their name as a coach. That's why if you've done almost anything as a coach, you will very quick. I mean, the obvious example is Ash. That's why you get to go straight to the top of that list. Because at this point in time, everyone else is either... Like, I'll give you an example of one where I'm still not sure what to make of him. The current NIP coach is Exist. Now, you can go and look. Well, think about all the time in Heroic Thorin. Yeah, it looked dope, didn't it? Problem is, you look back now, how much of that was Cadian, though? It's hard to judge, isn't it? If you're only judging him off his time in NIP, you'd be like, he's kind of an average coach, probably, right? He's had some talent, some alright performances, some other performances. And if I even just go and look at these, the names on this like Blast Bounty one, mate, there are loads of people where they're either just former pro that you're like, I mean, maybe he's good, people respect him, or they're people where the ones that only made their names. It's why, actually, do you know what's funny? You never ever saw me flame NKJ when he got signed to FaZe. Now, certainly, that's not a FaZe name, let's be real. Like, that's not like FaZe would be one of the biggest names. But I think if you're in the budget market and you're out for someone, that's someone I can tell you from talking to players that worked with him. A lot of people who worked with him said he's a really hard worker and he's a guy who gets in the demos and he has a good mind for the game. That's the kind of person you take a gamble on, bro. Like, it's not a slam dunk, but the difference is, in a weird way, I'd almost rather gamble on that player than Neo. Because I have no idea what Neo's like as a coach. Whereas that guy's done some things as a coach. I have some basis that he could be legit at his job,
I think it's an interesting conversation because to be completely honest, you brought in the football example, right? And nowadays when you hire coaches or managers, and that's the difference, right? In football, you either hire a manager or you hire a coach, and they're very explicit about what they hire when they do it publicly. So if you hire, let's say, Jose Mourinho to be a coach, well, he's just the coach. Like, he takes care of the team, he takes care of team selection, but he's not involved in acquiring players and he's not demanding players. He doesn't have a say in who he wants to get in the team. Naturally, they're probably going to ask him, do you want to work with this player or not? But at the end of the day, most coaches, they just work, as you said, as journeymen. They go from team to team and the team decides, the board decides who are we going to invest in terms of players. Are we going to have a young squad? Are we going to sign a superstar? Are we going to sign a player that we think we can sell for more money in the future? Yada, yada, yada. Whereas, as I understand it in football, if you're hired as a manager, if you're hired as the manager for the team, then you're involved in everything, whether that being from the fisher department, whether that being in the transfer market, whether that being, getting the players you need to get in order to accommodate your style, as you said, so you can actually put your mark on the team. I don't know if there's a market for that in Counter-Strike. I don't know if there's a communication thing for it yet. And I don't know if the coaches are important enough. And I think that could be a cool discussion to have on a podcast. Like, how important are the coaches nowadays in Counter-Strike? Because if they're as important as I would like them to be, if they actually can be the Blade of Na'Vi, or if they can actually be the Saw of G2, coaches where you feel like, okay, if this coach, let's say the Blade decides to leave Na'Vi, or he decides to retire tomorrow, my faith in Na'Vi as a team would instantly plummet. Right? I think they would be a much worse team if that were to happen. Whereas, as you said, if NEO one day decided to quit on FaZe Clan, or if he decides to quit on Astralis, I'd be like, sure, they'll just get another ex-former pro player, and who cares, right? So I'm curious to that whole discussion, whether or not there's something to be said about whether you're hired in as a coach or you actually hired in as the quote-unquote manager, where you get a say in what player you acquire, where you get a say in, okay, we now hire you as a coach. We have these 5 players. You got to work with them. You got to get the most out of them. But we actually have a 2-year plan where you get to choose, or you get to have a say in the next transfer market, or in the next player break, or whenever this player or that player, or whenever any good player becomes available. We promise you that you will have a say in, how to get him, and how much you're willing to get him, and how much money we're going to spend on him. But it does feel like the, I guess, economy in Counter-Strike, and it's already so thinned out and stretched out in organizations. We had this whole new thing with the sticker money as well, and the foundation for some of these transfer market fees to even be put up. Maybe the rug has been pulled out of some of these organizations because they don't get as much sticker money as they had budgeted with, and so forth. So I don't know if there even is a realistic world where that could be the case. But if I am to take coaching seriously, deeply seriously, if I am to value a guy like NEO as much as a player within Astralis, or if I am to value a guy like TaZ in BC Game as much as Simple in BC Game, if I am valuing Blade as much as some of the players in Navi, which I do, then I do think there's a certain responsibility on some of those organizations to communicate whether or not Blade is directly involved in acquiring the players, if he's actually the manager of the team and not just the coach. Because if you hire NEO as a coach to Astralis, I'm okay with that. If he's just the coach, right? Because then he's limited. It's not like him going out signing players, and I don't need to have faith in him scouting the market and knowing what kind of money you can throw on what kind of player and what is this guy worth. But if you're hiring Blade as a manager to a team, then I have full faith in him actually doing that part of the job. And I feel like there's some maturing to do in that regard.
It's also why, because of the org and the fact it's a new project, I don't mind the Glaive signing, because what you're doing there is you took one of the people who was the best ever at tactics and you're just gambling. Maybe he makes it. If he does, you'll be a genius in 2 years from now. And that's a player you probably wouldn't be, a coach you wouldn't be able to get. Whereas the difference is people like NEO, he was never some genius tactical in-game player. That was never his gig. That was never what he was doing. By the way, speaking of, if you are someone who wants to be a manager or a coach, you want to have input on what's happening and you want to make the best out of everything, you can actually take that role within Last Free Nation, because Last Free Nation Premium is live. If you subscribe, you will get access to all 16 of our talk shows ad-free on all the podcast platforms. You have a special Discord that you can join, and if you do, you can submit questions for us. We'll do a Q&A section. You can even submit a topic. Your name will be read out. No one's done it yet because we only just launched it, so I can tell you there's only a few people who have signed up already, and obviously they haven't yet gotten used to this. So if you do it, go to the Discord. There's a special thing in there. It's like Counter-Strike Premium or whatever, and in there there's different topics, and what you do is there's one where if you go into the topics one, say it's for counterpoints, pick a topic you want me and Pimp to talk about in the future. If you want to do Q&A, if we get enough of them, we'll do a little 15-20 minute Q&A that goes behind a paywall. Anyway, there's one last aspect for this show, this episode. Go to lastfreenation.com and subscribe there. Also, if you're doing so, why not pick Counterpoints as your favorite game? Then we get more of the subscription. Also, there's one last polymarket for you. I thought this is just a fun one, right? At Blast Bounty Season 2, will there be a map that is just a perfect game? It's a 13-0. At the moment, it's all the way down at 17%. So essentially, obviously, I can't really ask you to predict this. I'm more thinking this, Pimp. Why do you think the 13-0s happen so rarely? Why is it just not really a thing in Counter-Strike, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like when you watch a game, right, and a team goes up 10-0, 11-0, maybe even win the first half 12-0, like, more often than not, the other team is just winning the. I don't know if it's letting foot off the gas pedal, or whether or not the pistol rounds are random enough that, let's say a team is actually leading the game 12-0, they're clearly the better team, but in a pistol round, it's anyone's round. So half of those options or half of those opportunities goes missing. Probably part of it. I don't know. Like, in theory, it should be much more likely to have a 13-0 game than a 16-0 game, right? And obviously, they also did happen rarely, not often. It's hard to say. I think Counter-Strike, to be honest, and that's why I love Counter-Strike and the beauty of Counter-Strike, it's anyone's games, it's anyone's round. When you have a full buy round, going up against full buy round, in theory, it doesn't matter what has happened in the 15 rounds before that, or in the previously 3 rounds before that. And I think that's part of the charm why Counter-Strike is fun to watch, why comebacks are happening, why some players and some teams who have a great mentality, stand out in that department, is that at the end of the day, the rounds are equal. Whether or not you're down 5-0 in a game of Counter-Strike, if you go into that next round with a full buy round, the game and the round in isolation is equal. So I think it takes a lot for a team to win 13-0, and if anything, I think it's more dependent on the opponent. It takes you to be god-awful in a game of Counter-Strike. It takes 3 of your 4 players or 3 of your 5 players to have an off game for even to be in a scenario where one of them is not going to win a round by getting a multi-kill in a certain scenario, or by pulling something out of the sleeve at a certain point in a game. So it's not unlikely, and I'm honestly surprised to see a 17%.
Yeah, it's quite high, actually, isn't it? Yeah,
it's super high. It's super high to my liking.
Yes,
I guess the theory is that it's online Counter-Strike, and to some degree I can understand that. I can also see the trend right now is going downwards, and I'll say it like this: if there were to be a 13-0 game, it probably would have needed to happen in round 1 here, where the big favorites are meeting some of the biggest underdogs, and then maybe that would screw the odds a little bit in that favor. But I don't personally see it happening, and I don't really care. I don't know about you, but I don't fancy that much. I know people go crazy, and it's a fun meme, and it's cool to do a tweet about it. And HLTV had the 5 minutes of, this team sucks, got 13-0, haha. But I don't care if you lose 13-0, if you lose 13-3. To me, it's all the same.
No, here's the thing. The biggest shock, actually, is the thing that if you go back at one point in time, it was up to like 43%. Like, who were those people?
Crazy.
Who were those traders, mate? Like, what universe could you ever predict that was going to? Because, first of all, they happen so rarely, Pip, and I think it's unfortunate. Like, you nailed some of it. And some of it's just psychological, right? I'll give people a game scenario that'll help explain this to you. Think how many times what happened to Falcons happens to pro teams in almost every match. You have a time where you're up 4v2, or you got a bomb plant and you can't lose, and suddenly 2 people just feed immediately, and then suddenly it's a 2v2, or like the player's in it and it's a 1v1. Because here's the problem: when you're up 4v2, it's human nature to be like, we basically can't lose this round. And then what happens is the first person to engage just thinks, well, if I die, it's still a 3v2, we still. And that thinking doesn't stop until suddenly it's a 2v2, and it's like, fuck, we've thrown our whole advantage away. It's just unfortunate. So I think similarly, if you are up 9-0, 10-0, fuck it, if you do the 12-0, first of all, in your brain, it's sort of like, we're winning this game, fuck, this is easy. You do let your foot off the gas unconsciously. And then also, let's be real, like, it's not a minor thing. When you go on the pistol round the next time, it's a full reset of the game. There's no economic advantage. In that scenario, I feel like the other team tries so hard on that pistol, bro. They go, because obviously it's humiliating to lose a perfect game, isn't it? And also, let's be real, this is a problem, I think. If you are the team that wins, it actually doesn't matter to you whether you win 16-8, 16-3, 16-0, 13-8. No, that doesn't matter. Like, 13-1 and 13-0 to you are the same. You dominated. The other team was shit. They weren't in the game. You win. Like, unfortunately, there's nothing special you get for doing a victory. I'll even compare again to football. Think how many times in football you do have some like crazy, outrageous score. Like someone does win, like, fucking, they score 5 or 6 goals. By the way, most times the other team scores 1 goal. Because again, at the end of the game, when you're up 6-0, who cares if they score? Okay, congrats, you don't get any of the points, by the way. And yeah, I guess we get 1 goal against us. What in this scenario, we have +5 anyway. Like, we've already had an absurd result. Like, I just think also it's human nature to slack off a little bit when you basically won the game. And even though technically Counter-Strike doesn't work that way, obviously in theory, if they win 1 round, they can win them all. You just know if you're up 12-0 that you won the game. You just have, let's be real. It's all psychologically already over. So, and then lastly, as you say, it's not a minor detail. Unlike other games, because in Counter-Strike, every few rounds, the economy resets, you just get back in the game. It's even state again. And if you have really good players, you shoot them in the head. Like, I've always thought, people don't realise, if Counter-Strike was more like a MOBA game, if you were down economically, you'd just be down the whole game. It'd be even worse. Like, it'd be absurd. Like, that's why in those games, they've actually had to literally make combat mechanics, where almost like Mario Kart, otherwise the game would just be at one side, completely dominate the other one, and it would actually be really bad viewership. So I think it's insane there's any percentage pimp. Like, 13-0s happen so rarely, and it's impossible to predict them. I'm just going to say, actually, if it stays at 17%, I'd say just take no. I think you've got a pretty fucking excellent likelihood you are just going to win, even though it's not going to be massive amount. I think the value is just take no on this. Like, I'm shocked it's as high as 17. Obviously, if you could have gotten in at 44%, you'd be laughing, but you can't now. Whatever. I'd say you just take this one on this one, mate.
Yeah, I'd say so too. There's still good value right there, and as you said, like if you could get in at 44%, that would have been potentially a gold mine. I'm sad I didn't see it.